Chapter 45. The judge rode back from the shooting range with Mr. Willington and me. What about Sanders' car? I said. Heck with his car, son. That thing's a disgrace to law enforcement. Am I going back to jail? The judge didn't answer me. Willington, was that the other missing boy driving that truck? Mr. Willington nodded. I guess he knows he just turned himself in. He does. And maybe got himself into trouble for being on the road without a license? He's a good driver, I said. For the first time, I saw Judge Mackin almost smile. He looked at me with one corner of his mouth turned up. Willington, if I didn't know better, I'd say your client still hasn't learned a thing about the way the rest of the world operates. Mr. Willington smiled but didn't reply. Don't look so smug over there, the judge said. If that constable had been half sane, all your fancy show business wouldn't have helped this boy. I'm not trying to fool you, Your Honor. I'm just glad things worked out the way they did. I'll tell you now, something's bothering me about this case from the start. I really couldn't put my finger on it until I got that bit settled with the constable. The judge rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath. You see, there's this boy who's raised out in the woods and doesn't know a thing about the world but what he's seen with a couple of miles of his stick hut. One day, this kid pops out of the woods, 10 years old, and starts walking down the blacktop. We automatically think we got to put him in the system, get him in the boys' home, make him property of the state. Well, everybody can't fit that slot. Why can't you just put the kid on your sofa and help him out a little? Heck, put him on your floor. This kid would have been fine in somebody's barn. You'll kill a boy like this in an institution. I'm guilty too, Mr. Wellington said. We all are, dang system. This kid needs something different. The judge turned around and looked at me again, like he was trying to figure out what I needed. Boy, what are we going to do with you now? I don't care anymore. You don't care, huh? No, sir. Your Honor, I've got it worked out where Moon will go, said Mr. Wellington. Okay, I've located his uncle. He says he'll adopt him. Uncle, I said. Where's his uncle while wild boys raising Joe Kane all over central Alabama? He's been mobile. Your Honor, he didn't know anything of the situation. Chapter 46. We dropped the judge off on the steps of the courthouse. All of the reporters were gone and the place seemed empty. He got out of the car and stretched his arms over his head like he'd had a long day. After a second, he turned around. Looks like you gave the press the slip. You two wait here a while I get something. I climbed onto the front seat and began studying all the dashboard controls. Where'd you get this car? This is what I use when I'm trying to be fancy, Moon. Lots of lights and buttons. It wasn't long before the judge returned with my hats in his hand. He leaned into the window and dropped them into Mr. Wellington's lap. Moon, you write me a letter and let me know what it's like in Mobile. Okay. Wellington, he's under your care until his uncle comes for him. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for not wasting my time today. The judge stood up, tapped the top of the car, and then turned away. Neither of us said anything as we drove out of town. I found a button that made my seat lean back, and another that made the window go down. I stretched out and watched the tops of the trees go by and the clear blue sky beyond it. It was good to know Sanders was locked up and that Kit would be okay. It seemed like all of a sudden my mind was working easier and I felt better all over. What's my uncle look like? I finally asked. You seen the picture. I didn't pay attention to it then. It's in that envelope under the seat if you want to see it again. I sat up. I reached under the seat and pulled out a brown envelope. Where's Pap's personal box? It's in the trunk with your other stuff. How'd you get it all? What do you think I've been doing for the past 2 days? Mr. Dean over here at Pinson's not real eager to help you, you know. Did you get my rifle too? Well, that's still at the Livingston police station, but I think I can get them to release it to me after the paperwork's complete. I leaned back and dumped the contents of the envelope into my lap. Pap's watch and the money and the pictures were all there. The man in the photo was much shorter and skinnier than Pap, but had the same face in a more boyish version. He seemed excited and energetic. It looks like he's got a pee. Mr. Wellington smiled. I imagine if he's related to you, he might have a little twitch in him. You know what he's like? I haven't met him, but I've talked to him on the phone. He sounds like a nice man. What's he do? He's in the tree trimming business. I'd never heard of anybody doing that. Well, it's done all the time. A man can make a decent living at it. How'd you find him? Mr. Wellington reached into his pocket and pulled out a penknife and gave it to me. Pry open the back of that watch. The back of what? That's right. I opened the knife and inserted the tip of the blade into a small depression in the gear cover. It popped off and fell into my lap. I picked it up and studied the writing on the inside. It said Zundel's Jewelers. That's the name of the jewelry company in Mobile that I happen to know about. I called them and they told me the Blakes they knew. Eventually, I ran across the right one. I found the knife and gave it to him. After I put the watch back together, I put everything into the envelope again and looked out the window. I ought to whip Hal good for doing what he did today. I told him he didn't have to come. Once I got your pap's rifle from him, I said we already had enough evidence. However, he said it's what he wanted to do. He said that his time was up anyway and that you'd had a rough go with the world. He wanted to do all he could to get Sanders off your back. I looked at Mr. Wellington. I haven't had it so bad. Kit's the one that's had it bad. Mr. Wellington nodded. I pulled my legs up and put my feet on the glove box. Well, Hal ought not have done that. He could have hid out for a while longer. It'll be a couple of days before they get around to taking him to the Helen Weller. I'll drive you to see both of your friends tomorrow. I nodded. Good. I was wanting to do that. How long have I got? It'll be a few days before the paperwork's done. You're still property of the state, technically. Then I go to Mobile? That's right. You been there before? Sure, plenty of times. What's it like? It's a nice place to live. You got Mobile Bay and the Gulf of Mexico out front. Stays warm most of the year. Got some forest? Yes, it's got plenty of forest. Got a lot of people? Yes, more than Tuscaloosa. That's a lot. I've never seen more than that. Well, Mr. Willington reached over and patted my leg. I looked at the hand and realized it was the first time a grown person had touched me with kindness since my pat. You'll like it, he said. I stayed in Mr. Wellington's guest room again. I got up around midnight and took the picture from the envelope and studied my uncle's face under the lamp. Somewhere in the back of my mind, little black and white images of him flipped around. I thought I saw him standing beside a church. I thought I saw his face hovering over my own and smiling at me. As soon as I tried to hold on to one of those images, though, it fell away and left me with only the face in the photo. Then a strange thought came to me. I walked across the hall to Mr. Wellington's door. I knocked lightly until he answered me. Moon? Yes, sir? I opened the door. Are you all right? Yes, sir. What is it, then? Well, I have a brother. He sat up in his bed in the dark. He rubbed his eyes. Yes, he said. And a sister. You have two first cousins. I never thought about it before. Try to get some sleep. You'll have plenty of time to think about it later.